Hi, I'm Joe Rourke, and welcome to this walkthrough of the Sales Workbook. The Sales Workbook is used by sales managers and also executives to get a feel for the performance of the sales team, how deals have been closing in the previous fiscal year and the current fiscal year, also any opportunities that are targeted for the current month, forecasted for this month or the upcoming months, to get a feel for what's coming and what can be done to be changing things to have a better outcome. Let's go over into the sales workbook, and the first thing you'll see is on the first page I have a refresh data button, and the refresh data button will download information from your report data warehouse. It'll download the most recent opportunity data that's refreshed nightly. The opportunity data will include all closed opportunities that were closed in the previous fiscal year and the current fiscal year, and also open opportunities that are currently forecasted. The data is used, first of all, the first thing is for trending information. One of the things that we think that is very important is to have a portfolio of trend charts to show you the performance over time. One of the things that's important in this case is aggregating by month what the sales performance has been. Some information they have at the top of the screen is some summary information year to date about what has closed. One of the things you'll see is that every opportunity has a section to indicate what was the monthly revenue. This is kind of the monthly recurring revenue that you bring in, and it also has a field for one-time revenue. So what we do is we aggregate all the information from the opportunities. So you can actually see what they've closed is recurring service contracts that represent $493,000 of monthly recurring revenue that you're going to be getting every month. Also $859,000 worth of one-time revenue. We also provide for these two fields the average, and this is the total amount divided by the opportunities that closed for it. So I can see that my on average, the monthly average recurring contract was giving me $139 a month. One-time average was $715 for what was a one-time fee. Days to close is also important. This is the time that it takes between when an opportunity is created and when it closes. So you're often looking at how long does it take for me to close certain types of deals. That's where you would get the days to close. You're really kind of always interested in is it taking me longer to close deals or shorter to close deals? What is the variance? The trending charts include a section for monthly and for one time. And what we're showing is monthly revenue to plan and also cumulative to date. So it's going to kind of show you I'm having a fixed amount here of saying that my target is $30,000 per month. You can specify a target for each month, and it will show you how you're doing to plan, to target. You can highlight over any field and see what the values happen to be in comparison. I also see kind of the average monthly revenue and how that's been changing over time. Am I growing? Am I getting, is my average size deal getting smaller? Anytime we show an average, we also show the distribution. So you're seeing kind of distributions of graphs where you're showing what was the makeup of it. The average tells you something, but is it a growing section that are my deals that are larger than 600 as an example. Average days to close. You can kind of see here they're all taking over 30 days. So you can actually modify, and I'll show you that in a separate video, modify how you can actually change these fields, so that you can actually see the age to close. And you're kind of seeing this age to close for monthly revenue. Again, the same information presented for one-time revenue. So I kind of see my distribution of my charts, my one-time revenue. And then we have total revenue and cost information. So total revenue is that you specify within the opportunity the number of months to actually represent monthly revenue, and it adds up and comes up with a total. And this is showing you the total revenue. If you use 12 months, it would be annualized revenue. So it'd add the one time and the monthly revenue times 12. And you get that kind of comparison. You can also put an estimated cost in your opportunity, and if you wanted to include those, you'd actually see that information here. This is not the actual cost of what it costs to provide that information. That's really on the revenue spreadsheet. You also have total cost gross margin, which is also in the opportunity where it is calculated. You have up to 5 advanced opportunity fields, so the information regarding the value versus plan and cumulative to plan are within the workbook, and you can specify how they operate. Again, you can specify on your current fiscal year tab the actual targets to be compared against. In addition to comparing against your own internal targets, it's often useful to also compare against the previous fiscal year. So here's where we're taking the closed opportunity information for the previous fiscal year and comparing it to the existing fiscal year, and you're getting a trend to see how did I compare the current fiscal year versus the previous fiscal year. It's very helpful when you have certain seasonality, so you can actually see how you're doing and see that kind of seasonality. One of the things to note is that this all comes from the previous fiscal year tab. If you were not using Autotask at the time, where there were calculations performed, you can actually manually enter those if you wish to, and then compare against what you had already calculated as what your monthly targets would use. Again, we're seeing comparisons of average close time, giving a quarterly to quarterly comparison, because when you're typically looking at some trending, it might be that you have some dips on specific months, but how was I doing quarterly? I see my one-time revenue trends. I also see my total and cost revenue trends. So all that information is provided along with the quarterly analysis. Oftentimes, in addition to having trending information, it's also important to get snapshot information. What we find in every business is the same as, how did I do last month? So one of the things we do is we provide 3 snapshot views, which is basically a snapshot. It's a time snapshot. It's a time snapshot. One shows you closed last month, one shows you closed currently this month, and there's also a currently forecasted this month. So you can get an at-a-glance view of what went on in those specific time periods. So I saw a fiscal year trending, but this is going to show me things that happened currently last month. So I get my current monthly amounts that were specified in the opportunities, along with my one-time and the total number of deals. I'm seeing here basically, as you would see, when did the deals close, and you can specify teams within here, which are basically salespeople focused. So you can group your salespeople in specific teams or territories that you want to actually show them to show a distribution of revenue by those specified groups. That's all on your configuration tab. And what you wind up seeing is you kind of see, typically as you'd see towards the 15th of the month, I got this hockey stick of when my deals all come in. In the last week, I show my distribution of closed by group, and this is all for the monthly revenue. And then I actually see my top 5 salespeople. So I'm getting a view for who was actually performing last month. I see the same thing for one time, and then what I get is I get a breakdown by the day of what happened during the month, along with who closed it, what the account was, and I can get a view of the specific data. Now, one of the things you'll also see is we include the monthly, the one-time, the total revenue, total cost, the opportunity value, so you get that kind of that granular view. The next thing you have is you have to close this month, and this is also important because sometimes as an executive you want to say, just how am I doing so far this month? And this will give you, and this would be like on the, if you were the 8th of, it was the 8th of January for this example data, and it would show you the information distribution that you had coming in terms of the total MRR, top users, closed MRR by group, and it has the exact same format. And typically what someone's going to be doing though is they're going to look down through and they're going to say, okay, what happened yesterday? And this is where it's really helpful because I can see who closed what on yesterday, and I get that kind of feeling of progression through a month. The next snapshot is forecast, and forecast is very similar in that it has the monthly running total and the projected MRR by group and projected MRR by the top reps. And here I'm looking and I'm thinking, Lauren has a big deal that's pending, and I may want to work specifically on seeing how that's doing. But I also see projected for the monthly MRR by the stage and the average probability of the orders that are in that stage. And one of the things that you're often looking at and trying to see at a glance is that depending on how many stages, and we have a lot of stages here, you may want to look at it and say, if it's towards the end of the month and I am currently at a stage called prospect new inquiry, maybe that's really not something that I'm going to be diving in to understand. So this gives you kind of a view of the probability and the total amount of value in the various stages that you have. And that's for monthly. We give the same information for one time. And again, one of the things you'll see here is you see a breakdown, but not by the date, but by the person. So again, one of the things we saw was Lauren. And what you can do is you can go down through and find a specific person and then look at their totals. Now this is actually grouped by also grouped by their group. But you can go down through and actually see the information that individual people have, and then see the individual data. Now, one of the things that people often want to do is not only take the information about what closed and what is forecasted, but do the exploration. And so we provide an Explore screen. And if you haven't used the Explore screen before, the Explore screen will use a series of slicers where you can slice the information that's presented, and then provide information that's both graphical and tabular to show what's happening in that period. You can see here I've chosen 2013, and what it's showing me is it's showing me the monthly and the one-time revenue for those specific time periods. So I wound up getting information here regarding deals, monthly, one time. I see the top 10 that's associated in that specific time period. I see the MR ranges, again, by the distribution ranges that we have that are specified, along with the one-time ranges, where you can see the distribution as specified in those groups. I can see my advanced fields, professional services, number of users, monthly extensions, whatever I'd happen to be using here, monthly user fees. I can show the age at close, and then this is actually always showing me in terms of a comparison of my teams. So I see my comparison of my teams. I see my opportunity gross margin values, and then I see my data that's specific to that information. Now, one of the things I can do for closed information is I can drill into, in this case, I can drill into a specific person. So suppose I really wanted to just say, I'm really interested in Pete's work. Well, now what I wind up doing is I see just all of Pete's monthly revenue that he had and one-time revenue that he's had, and I can actually see how Pete has been doing. Or maybe what I want to do is I want to look at a specific team of people. So I want to compare, and not like I said team, a territory, a group of people that are associated with a specific team. So here's the team associated with team 1, or I could say team 2, which probably has Pete at the top, who's Pete's part of team 2. I can drill into specific months, so I can say I only want to look at the last quarter and look at those last 3 quarters, October, November, December of 2013. How are they doing? What do they do? I can also drill into specific deal types. Maybe what I'm interested in is I'm really only interested in the deals that had over 20K. And I can actually see, in this case, there were 4 deals. Pete was probably the highest because he's actually been somebody who actually had the highest deals from the standpoint of one time. In those deals that had one-time revenue, they also had some monthly revenue, or they actually didn't have monthly revenue. They're just one-time amounts that were specified here. So that's how you really use the Explore screen for closed deals and getting a feel for what's closed. What's also as important, or more important, is forecasting information. And again, it works very similarly. That what you do is you choose the actual time period in which you want to forecast for. So I may want to actually forecast in this case, and it's based on the example data, I may just want to forecast for 2014, 1, 2, and 3. So one of the things I'll just do is I'll choose 2014, those 3 months. And now all the data gets modified on the screen associated with those 3 months. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing the total revenue, but I'm also seeing the total number of deals that's associated to that. So I can see basically 700 deals for that are going into this in this area. Likewise, I can drill into individual teams or individual salespeople. I can drill into specific ranges. I can also see, maybe this is what I'm forecasting. What basically has a low probability, So basically, I could look at specific areas that had low probability. and I want to take a look at those that have individual low probability. Maybe I'm looking at a specific month, this month, what has a low probability. Interestingly, what we also do is we show the stages. So in this case, I might say, if I was actually saying today was, I was looking for things that are forecasted for the current month, I might say, well, I don't really want to, what are the ones that are just in the prospect stage? Maybe I don't want to include those. Likewise, if I didn't want to include those, I could simply just extract out anything that's in the prospecting stage and not look at that information. The other thing that you'll have, and this is demo data, so it also says older, is that we also track when the last time someone edited or updated the opportunity. So if I have something that's forecasted for the current month, but someone hasn't worked on the last 30 days, I may not think that that's really kind of been something that's been updated. And as a sales manager, you can go in and actually look at what is currently forecasted but what hasn't been touched. Likewise, I would use the screen to actually look at things that may actually be currently have a projected date of the previous for previous months, but they haven't been actually closed out. Either they haven't been updated and reforecasted, they just slide off the radar screen. So you can actually look at if there's anything that's actually projected for the previous fiscal year or the previous months, they would appear here as well. You have two spreadsheets that actually show you the information regarding opportunities closed for the current fiscal year and the previous fiscal year. All of this information is used to drive your trending. So the information that you see here in terms of the quarterly or the monthly numbers are shown. One of the things that's important on these screens is that as you move across, you will actually see that there are plan numbers. So one of the things I can see is that I have here's what we're actually calculating, and here are plan numbers. And you can go down through and specify what your plan number is. So that was a $30,000 target that I happen to have. But I could change it to $50,000. And immediately what you'd see over here, if I went to the top, is that my target is now $50,000 for that month. So I'm getting that kind of comparison being calculated. Changing all of those fiscal years has an immediate effect. Some of the things that you can also do, and you can kind of see, is the age to closed. We had distribution information. You can use that criteria button, and the criteria button allows you to go down through and change, similar to the service workbook and the financial workbook, kind of the range information. So if my monthly revenue ranges weren't appropriate for the data set that was being presented, I could modify my ranges here, and then everything would be compared against it. You can kind of see is that one of the things we saw was that everything was over 30 days, as an example. So what I may want to do is I may want to say, I'm interested in everything that closes in 0 to 60 days, 60 to 120 days, 120 days to 300 days, 300 days and up. And one of the things that, and I would also change my labels, of course, so basically saying 120 to 300 days. I'm going to say 60 to 120, and less than 60 days. Okay, and over 300. And what I'm basically just doing is changing my distribution number so I have a better distribution of the age to close for one time. Because one of the things I saw over on this thing is when I go down to the monthly one-time area, I have age to close. And one of the things I see is average age to close, and now I've got less than 60 days. And now I'm seeing basically what my numbers happen to be. So I can say 100 to 300 days there were 63 deals, and there were 36. And really you want to get a distribution where you can see, is there getting to be more of a prevalence? Percentage-wise, it doesn't appear that there seems to be a steady state of the ones that are over 130 versus 120. But you set up the ranges so you can kind of see that distribution. So all this information, and that's basically set as part of criteria button, can be set We also have a section at the top which is basically metrics that matter. If you wanted to basically have a glance of certain values below that you wanted to match, like opportunities are closed. These are all basically just references of the data below that you can just basically eye in the spreadsheet. So you're not going down through the spreadsheet and looking for average data closed. So we picked out what we thought were kind of the areas that people looked at the most in terms of some of the individual data. Configuration, like everything else, setup is very straightforward. You go to the setup screen and you put in your credentials for setup. You can also specify your company name. So rather than a company name, I might want to say Joe Consulting. And now that would be the name that would appear over on the front page. I can specify my fiscal year and my currency symbol. So fiscal year and currency symbol, again, it may be that you don't start on January, you start on April. And you can specify the fiscal year, and then that would be the start of the fiscal year. This is also what would be the fiscal year start for your current fiscal year in terms of the year. I can specify a symbol. This doesn't do any kind of translation of the actual numbers that are coming in opportunities, but if you're currently working in Autotask in euros or you're working in Autotask in pounds or dollars, you can specify the currency, so all the reporting here is using that currency symbol. We have a different advanced where clause for the closed information versus the forecast information. And one of the things that you can use here is you can actually use this to exclude or only include certain information. This is saying I really only want to include any opportunities that had a close date greater than 2012, January 2012. Basically, it limits the data set. So basically, it'll gather all closed information. But since I'm only showing from the previous fiscal year, in this case, it was 2012 and 2013. I can specify that, and it's as simple as going in and specifying and changing a date. What I could also do is I could use this if I had a business that there were multiple divisions and I wanted to separate out certain information. We have separate, as an example, in Autotask, we have separate sales workbooks for our North American versus our international business. That basically will include certain sales reps. So basically we restrict out the list and we have an in list of the sales reps that are associated to it. The advanced where clause for forecasting, again, this can use the projected close date that's associated to it. So in this case, do you want to include everything that's projected out? Some people put a projection of 2020. Is that really data that I want to include or not? So we actually put in a range of data here so that it basically includes a range of information. It keeps your list of projected dates within a minimum. But certainly everybody should have standard best practices to keep the dates up to date and to not use forward projecting too far. We have custom groups, and the custom groups is really where you're going to specify what the group names happen to be and who's in those groups. So again, I kind of said North America, right? And I said international, right? But I also might have like services or aftermarket team. And now what you wind up doing is you create those custom groups, and what you're also going to do is you're going to go down and you're going to say, okay, these guys are part of, and these guys are part of this group, and then and then associate each one of your resources and the resources name to those groups. Now, one of the things that we automatically do when we come in is that we'll take an initial configuration, put all of your current sales resources in this list, but you're going to want to do that yourself as well. One of the things you'll see on the closed forecast is that we also do a by resource. So you're actually going to see a by the individual resources, resources names on the spreadsheet itself. So each one of your resources for what they've been doing for one time or MR will be included in the actual current fiscal year and the previous fiscal year spreadsheet. We don't present that in trending, but it allows you to go in and actually look at individual performances within the spreadsheet itself. And that includes the walkthrough of the sales workbook. Thank you very much.